Okay, so today, or for this module that will span 6 weeks or so, we're going to talk about data viz for designers. But first, we're going to talk about what is data. And I'm sure that all of us, I hope, has some experience with Excel and making those bar graphs or pie charts, whatever. We're going to take that to another level. But first, let's talk about what is data. Data is a linear story that expresses changes over time. And you're recording data through variables. And a couple different kinds of variables, and they are typically, if you record one, the goal is to usually see how one affects the other. Not always, but we have binary variables. These are either true or false, yes or no. Only two outcomes. Did I go to the gym today? Yes or no. There's no other answer here. There's nominal variables. These are non-ranked. It's a form of data that, so there's no hierarchy. And I think a good example would be, going with this gym theme, you're recording how many people are at the gym. Are there none? Are there a few? Are there many? None of these answers are more important, or I shouldn't say important, but there's not one that's better than the other in this case. But it's still relevant because, perhaps once you complete your data set, you'll find out that you performed better at the gym when there were no people, or you performed better at the gym when there were many people. But it is non-ranked, but could have an effect on other things. And then later you'll find out, okay, well, when I start doing more data sets, there is a hierarchy to this. So this could end up moving to the ranked category. There's ordinal variables, and these are ranked. So for me in particular, I would consider a high exertion workout more successful than a low exertion. I would feel that the higher exertion workout is successful. It means I performed really well. It means, I'm probably going to be sore tomorrow. Those are, in line with my goals. Whereas a low exertion day, maybe if my workouts are constantly low exertion, I'm not going to get the outcome that I set out to do. So this is ranked. There's also independent variables that you can manipulate. So for example, the amount of protein you consume, or the time spent at the gym. But time spent at the gym can also be a control variable. It's just, these are dependent on how you are recording data. What are your goals for recording data? Now, your goals are going to revolve around your dependent variables. These are the changes in the outcomes. So for example, maybe by recording all this data, I want to know, how does my weight change over time? How does my sleep quality change over time? How does my capacity to lift a certain level of weights change? So this is typical to be your intended outcome, your intended your goal for the data collection. So, and then there's the control variables. These are never changing. So for example, maybe you only own one pair of workout shoes. Is if you do lift weights, you would be familiar that there's flat shoes and then there's arched shoes, and those have an effect on your workouts. So maybe you only have one shoe that you are going to be using for this data set. And then again, time spent at the gym can be a control. You're committing to 60 minutes, no more, no less, that you will be at the gym. So kind of a sample of how I record this data or would record this data. And you can do this by hand. You can do it by Excel. It doesn't matter. But I have my binary set. This is yes or no. I went to the gym. Assuming there's other data here, that means like, yes, it's true. I went to the gym. Time of day I went could be dependent. It could also be in control. It could also, maybe you're committing to only going to the gym at 10 a.m. for 60 minutes every time you go. But maybe you want to know how do you perform at different times of day? Do you perform better going early? Do you perform better going late? An independent variable, the amount spent at the gym, independent, or it could also be binary, depends on what your data set is. So this is independent because it includes upper body, lower body, and cardio. Binary would mean there's just two types, so you did upper body or lower body. There's also the ordinal, which we talked about, the ranked. So a high exertion level, or I put exhaustion, but it's similar. High would be that's successful, that's what we want. Low, bad workout. Protein amount, another independent variable. And then at the very end, we have hours of sleep and hunger levels. Those are my goals for finding out how my workouts affect my sleep and hunger. You could also do weight or measurements, whatever, just kind of going with the gym theme. So, how does my sleep change dependent on the rest of this data? And how does my hunger change on the rest of this data? So, this is the dry, crude, boring part of the of this presentation. Like just the data collection. I can't just show this information in a gallery or as a creative project. I would have to interpret this data into a graphic, and the goal for interpreting it as a graphic, such as some of these examples that I'll show you, is they are more visually interesting, they are more engaging, and they get people to read read your intent and process that, and take away whatever your goals are for this project. So I have a couple cool, or what I find really inspiring projects, where designers show information not in this dry, ugly spreadsheet, but into a graphic. And this one in particular was a project that explored key moments in the Me Too movement. And of course, these will be linked. But what this designer does, and this is a really good and simple example, is the bigger the space that this bubble takes up, the more relevant these objects are to the data. So smaller bubbles will represent smaller data sets, whereas bigger bubbles will represent bigger data sets. So this is a slightly more abstract, but something more very true to the data, as I found this designer did a step counter where he tracked his steps for 14 days. Here's his little diary entry. And he recorded what day, how many steps taken, what is that distance, how much time. So it looks like it'd be in hours, so 2.54 hours. And then how many calories were used. And what he does here is separates the data into the days and then a little chart, kind of like a little bar graph, but more interesting, marking 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, so on. And this is very easy to read because we can see, and day 1 was his most successful or highest step count day. He traveled the farthest in this day. And also looks like he spent the most time on day 1. And then also includes some statistics, how many steps total distance. That's like climbing 16,400 floors, and then walking for this many hours. So another very successful and inspiring designer is Shirley Wu, which I will show you both of these works. I really recommend you check out her work. I don't think her website is updated since 2019 though. But she does a very good job at showing 2D data visualization as well as 3D. And the 2D, so this is the second example I have, where she created this, she was responsible for everything. She created this interactive web page where she analyzes every set of lines in the musical Alexander Hamilton, or whatever it's called, and each color is representative of a different character, and she includes the lines, so you can kind of follow along to see like where each person speaks and what they say. So definitely check this one out. This is on her website. Interactive visualization of every line in Hamilton. I believe there's, some other cool, just like it's infographic, but to an interactive level. And the other example I wanted to show you guys was this work, which is a completely more abstracted set of data, where she creates these orbs. I believe she's on a team. They create these orbs, which inside the orbs will have a little bit of information about relevant women in the computer science industry. And these orbs are all hung from the ceiling, and the user will grab them and hold on to them to be able to view the information. So as each user, or as each person who comes into the space holds the orb will glow a little bit brighter. And what's really interesting about that is when you walk in the space, you'll be able to see the difference between orbs that are interacted with to a high level and orbs that are interacted with at a low level. And the difference you'll see is high interaction is brighter orbs, and low interaction would be low interaction would be a lower brightness level. So there's probably some like microcontrollers involved here, where each time it senses touch, it sends a message to the LED to step up a brightness level by X. So here they are setting up the space and setting up these little wires that the orbs will hang off of. And then going forward, seeing people interact with them. Definitely recommend checking this out. It's a very interesting way to show changes, show information, and then the changes of user interaction with that content. So here's their website. Check it out, please. And then another work by another really great data viz designer. Please check out her work. She has some really cool books called Dear Data, I think. But she is she's a very organized and she keeps a lot of data diaries, very concise, very organized, very thorough. So please check out her work. Here I have her website linked. But the first example I thought was kind of interesting because, again, we're showing data in a more abstracted space than just, number of something 10. This, X equals 50. Y equals May 29th. This is, I'll just pull it up here. What does this mean? And she does go through, and I believe she worked on a team for this, where they tracked significant dates in people's lives, starting with their birth date and then ending with a date that was around the COVID pandemic. But as you can see, these, so you see how significant, how a user, I don't want to say users, but the participants of this study, how the participants' important relevant dates changed throughout their lives. So you'll see in her little code, you see it starts with their birth date, one date, one line, and they choose 5 dates. First date is always the birthday, and the last date is between 2020 and the present. And kind of a key how she shows that. And then another Georgia Loopy project, which is a little more of the dry data side, less abstracted, not kind of open to visual interpretation, but the life cycle of ideas, where I believe she tracked content in scientific papers over the course of time and how those topics and content changed. So that is also on her website, I believe at the bottom. So just kind of showing the changes of how relevant studies can be and how maybe they are very popular for a time and then they drop off. So some cool examples, I think. And there's a lot of ways you can show data. So there's that literal interpretation that, we think Excel, pie charts, graphs, line charts, the very kind of boring showing of data. There's also abstracted analogies where you're still showing the data in a very clear-cut way, but you're adding a visual relevancy to it. And then there's analogies which further abstract it. So kind of as we go down, we do lose that those hard numbers. So you as the designer have to determine how do you want the viewers to read your data? How important is it for them to know the amount of time you went to the gym? Do you want them to know exactly you spent 65 minutes there? Or do you want them to understand that you spent more time on this day, less time on this day? Like, you make those design decisions. So this was a really good reference how we think visually and use visual analogies. So of course check this out as well. I would hope that most of you guys have seen data like this, this abstracted data. But yeah, and then the author goes through and kind of just gives a really good example of like how and why to use these things. So I hope that is some cool inspiration for you guys. But we have 3 assignment types around this. The first one is going to be the data visualization inspiration. So you will post this to discussions. You'll find 3 examples of visually with 3 L's appealing data sets, 2 discussions with a very brief explanation of why it is successful at displaying information. Include links and designer info if possible. Please resize it to like 500 by 500, so it's not huge. Quick explanation. Please don't link Pinterest. I mean, you can use Pinterest to search, but please don't just link Pinterest. It's not all of us have Pinterest accounts, and it's like so frustrating when you find something like on Google Images and it just links you to Pinterest. It makes you log in, but anyway. Yes, so you'll be posting 3 examples of data viz and the information around it. Why is it successful? Why do you like it? Yeah, pretty basic. So the other 2 assignments, one is a reoccurring assignment that you will post 5 times, and the other is our final. So for our weekly, you will decide, you'll be making a data visualization. And you will track 3, 4, 5, preferably, at least 3, at least 4 sets of data over the course of a 5-week period to produce a data visualization that visually shows how the variables may affect each other. So 2 aspects of this. You have the data diary and then the final data viz. The data diary, you will be posting an update, posting your log, your diary every week to the discussions, stacking 5 points each for a total of 25. So week 1, you'll be logging the information that you're tracking. May 14th to May 20, whatever that week is, then you will be posting that entry to discussions by May 22nd. Of course, you can do it sooner than that, but no later than for the points. Then week 2, you're tracking the data from May 21 to May 27. Is that correct? Whatever, week 2. Yeah, so week 2, then you'll be posting it on May 30th, so on, so on, so on. So here's my little sheet. So, and then your final is going to be so this is like your final exam kind of thing. You will be displaying this however you choose in a visually appealing way, making sure to submit your data diary to the discussions. You'll need to develop a visual key. So That's kind of part of the reason we're doing this inspiration post. So find data sets, and they don't have to necessarily be data sets that are in line with your data sets, but find data sets that show information in a way that you would like to show information. It can be completely abstract. It can be very clear cut. You know, it can be as clear cut as something like this or this, where we actually see the raw numbers. Or it can be something a little more abstracted like this, where we don't necessarily see the numbers and we're kind of more guessing at like what it is. Like, that's totally okay too. So that will be the last assignment that you do. Prefer to make it in Illustrator or Photoshop. If you want to for the final, Illustrator, Photoshop needs to be digital. Your data diary can be hand-drawn, or you can do it in Excel, whichever works best. Yeah. So cool. I hope that is all very helpful information to you. If you have any questions, of course, let me know. So yeah, our first thing, get those 3 inspos posted, and then next week you'll be tracking your data. So it should be clear what data you're tracking. And I have a couple ideas for you, but please do whatever, track whatever you'd like, whatever you're comfortable sharing on the discussions. Cool. All right. Thanks, guys.